Good morning, and thanks for joining us for a Tax Practitioners Board webinar. My name's Lun Lak, and I'm joining you from Gadigal country. I respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of country throughout Australia and their continuing connection to land, waters, and community. I would like to pay my respect to them and their cultures and elders, past and present. To begin, I have a few quick housekeeping messages. First, to obtain a copy of today's slides, you can visit our webinar resource hub at tbb.gov.au/webinar-hub. We'll also email you a copy of the slides. Today's webinar counts towards your continuing professional education or CPE, and you can claim 1 hour for attending. In relation to claiming your CPE, we will issue an attendance certificate to those staying on for the duration of the webinar. Today's presentation aims to help new registered practitioners understand their obligations. In particular, we'll unpack the role of the TBB, tax practitioner obligations, the Code of Professional Conduct, your ongoing registration requirements, penalties and sanctions, and we'll go through some real-life compliance case studies. And to finish up, we'll answer some of the common questions we received during the webinar. So make sure you submit your questions using the Q&A. We'll also have Daniel from our policy and legislation team to respond to your questions as we go. To find the Q&A, simply move your mouse over the screen and a range of icons will appear. We have a lot of people online today, so we may not get to all of your questions. However, we will have FAQs available on our website following the session. You can also use the chat function to speak with other participants, but if you need a response from us, make sure you use the Q&A. And also, to disable any of those functions, simply move your mouse over the relevant icon and unselect Show Preview. Also, please remember to keep your comments courteous and professional. I would now like to introduce our speaker for today, TBB Chair, Peter DeCure. Thanks for joining us, Peter. I'll now hand over to my colleague, Julie, to kick off the presentation.
Great, thank you, Lun, and good morning to everyone. Thanks for joining us today. As Lun mentioned, the purpose of our webinar today is to discuss the role of the TPB and what we expect of tax practitioners in order to maintain your registered tax or BAS agent status. So, Peter, to start us off today, I was hoping that you could just give us a bit of information about the profile of the registered tax practitioner community.
Thanks, Julie, and welcome to all, especially our new registered tax and BAS agents and everybody else who's joining us for a bit of a refresher. As you can see on the screen, the registered practitioner population as at 30 November 2024 was a total of 63,333 tax practitioners, and that's made up of 46,409 tax agents and 16,924 BAS agents. In today's seminar, and often we refer to registered practitioners, so that includes both tax and BAS agents. Just a couple of interesting stats around this. 68% of tax agents are individuals, and 32% of tax agents are either partnerships or companies. Sorry, not countries. There are, of the 16,924 BAS agents, 78% of BAS agents are individuals, and 22% are either agent partnerships or companies. In terms of the demographics, 47% of individual taxpayers are members of a recognised professional association, 69% of tax agents are male, and 82% of BAS agents are female. When it comes to the age of the profession, approximately 58% of individual tax agents are over 50 years of age, and 64% of individual BAS agents are over 50. In terms of the contribution of the registered agent population to the tax profession, approximately 63% of all individual income tax returns are lodged by practitioners. That's over 9.9 million individual tax returns lodged by practitioners each year. In business lodgements, 96% of company, partnership, trust and individual business income returns are lodged by practitioners, numbering in excess of 2.9 million lodgements each year. I think this is a genuine illustration of the importance of the tax agent, BAS agent population in terms of their contribution to the overall community. I'd also like to note that our most recent survey indicates that registered tax practitioners are highly trusted by their clients. In fact, in our last biannual survey, 90% of respondents said that they trust their tax agent or BAS agent completely. This is an increase from 71% in our previous survey.
Thanks, Peter. That's an amazing result, and I think that's a really good way to set the scene for today. Just wanting to move on now to look at the purpose and the function of the TPB.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. The Tax Practitioners Board, or we refer to ourselves as a TPB, is an independent statutory body that's responsible for the regulation of tax agent services, including BAS services in Australia. Our role is fundamentally a consumer protection role and helps to ensure the community that tax practitioners meet appropriate standards of professional and ethical conduct. Before we dive in any further, I'd like to see if you know or what you know about the role of the TPB. So, Julie, can you run a quick poll for us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Peter. So this poll will just pop up on your screen in a moment, and all we're asking you to do is select the appropriate response from the list. So the question that we have for you is, what is the role of the TPB essentially? So we've got three options there. The first one is regulation of tax and BAS agents, ensuring compliance with the Tax Agent Services Act 2009 and the Tax Administration Act 1953. The second option is the registration and regulation of tax and BAS agents, ensuring compliance with the Tax Agent Services Act 2009 or the TASA. And then the third option is registration and regulation of tax and BAS agents, ensuring compliance with the Tax Agent Services Act and carrying out work under the Corporations Act 2001. So it looks like we've got a few people responding there already, but I'll just give you a little bit more time to put through your responses before we finalise that. So we're up to about 50% of people putting through responses. So I'll just keep it open for a couple more seconds just to give you a chance. Okay, thanks everyone for participating. I'm just ending that poll now, and I'll share those results with you on the screen. So hopefully you can see those there. So Peter, we've got 30% of people saying that it's the regulation and ensuring compliance with the TASA and the Tax Administration Act. 35% have said it's only the Tax Agent Services Act, and 34% have said that it's the Tax Agent Services Act and the Corporations Act. So it's pretty evenly split there, but I'll hand back to you so you can tell us what the correct answer is. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. It's a pretty sneaky question, that one, really, isn't it? But the TPB was first established in 2010, and bringing together the 6 state-based tax agent boards and created by the Tax Agent Services Act 2009, and we refer to that as the TASA for short. The TASA regulates registered agents, be they tax agents or BAS agents. So the correct answer to the poll is answer B. The other 2 questions just added on a few extra things that aren't actually requirement or specific requirements under the TASA. So the TPB is separate from the ATO in terms of that we are independent in our decision making and operation from the ATO, but we do work closely with the ATO in terms of gathering intelligence and getting information about the disciplinary cases that we do run. Our Tax Practitioner Services Charter outlines our commitment to tax practitioners and includes your rights and responsibilities when dealing with us. Our relationship with you and the wider community is based on mutual trust and respect, and we nurture that relationship as best we can by being open and transparent with you and being as responsive and professional to you as we can be. Our charter is available on our website, and we'll send you a link to the charter following today's webinar. I'd like to move forward and talk a little bit about our strategic plan now. As you can see on the slide, we've got 4 specific strategic pillars in terms of how we want to go about operating in the future. The essential role of the TPB, as I've said, is to ensure tax practitioner services are provided to the public in accordance with appropriate professional and ethical standards of conduct. Our first pillar is in relation to our own people, and that's to make sure our people are ready and have adequate technology and culture for the future in terms of the work they need to do. Our second pillar is to foster collaboration and to partner with you and with the community at large in terms of the effective operation of the tax system in what is an ongoing and fast changing environment. Our third pillar is to do everything we can to make it easier for tax practitioners to work with us. This involves strengthening our interactions with the profession, both through webinars and training like this, through the guidance products that we release, and through having an effective and easy to use website and communications protocols with you. Our final pillar is to strengthen our regulation practice. And this is about making sure that we can drive reform and understand tax practitioner behaviour to better target our compliance activities and increase confidence through transparency. And when I say better target our compliance activities, I mean make sure we're focusing on the high risk and really bad behaviour that happens in the very minority of tax practitioner behaviour. Our plan for 24-25 has more information about our role and focus, and we'll also send you a link to that after our presentation today. Next, I'd like to talk quickly about the use of the registered tax practitioner symbol. As you can see there on screen, there's a symbol that is able to be used by tax agents and another symbol that's available to be used by registered BAS agents. We regularly promote the symbol to taxpayers, and we really think it's in your best interest to use the symbol as much as you can in your correspondence and interaction with your clients. It makes it clear that you are a registered practitioner, it makes it clear what your registration number is, and it makes it clear that you are properly licensed to practice, and gives you a way of discriminating or discerning yourself from other practitioners who aren't properly qualified or even registered to provide the services. So again, we really encourage you to use the symbol. You can download it from our website at tpb.gov.au/symbol, and this is part of the service that we offer you to try and differentiate your own practice in the marketplace. So let's jump forward and talk about tax practitioners' obligations.
We'll just move on there, Peter, to the professional, sorry, the PI insurance. Thank you.
Terrific. As you're all aware, one of the ongoing registration requirements is that you must have professional indemnity insurance cover that meets our requirements at the TPB, and you must tell us about the details of this cover. The PI insurance is a consumer protection mechanism for your clients in case they suffer any loss due to an act or omission in relation to the services that you provide. Importantly, whenever you update your PI insurance, you should update your details on your My Profile account at the TPB website. Again, I want to stress that the PI is as a consumer protection mechanism for your clients in relation to any loss that they suffer due to an act or omission because of the tax services that you'll provide. Generally, this PI insurance doesn't cover you for third-party cyber liability. It doesn't cover you for first-party cyber hacker damage, doesn't cover you for any sort of cyber extortion or data breach notification costs or any public relations costs. It's really a policy that you hold on behalf of your clients for their losses in relation to your tax services. So we strongly recommend that you review all your insurances and make sure that your business is properly covered for those cyber type events and hacker type events that could impact you personally and your ongoing business. Let's move on and talk about the ongoing registration requirements. Firstly, to maintain your registration with us, you must meet these requirements on an ongoing basis. And firstly, we're talking about having the relevant qualifications and experience For individuals, you need to meet our requirements in relation to continuing professional education, or CPE, and we'll discuss this in a little bit more detail lately. You must also notify us within 30 days of any changes when you cease to meet any of the tax practitioner registration requirements, the circumstances of any change. If there is a change in your business or email address, again, you must notify us. To notify us, you must do it in writing, and you can do it on your My Profile section of the TPB website. Before we go into the next section on the fit and proper assessment, we should know that these requirements apply. So let's do a quick poll and see who must satisfy the fit and proper person requirements. Over to you, Julie.
Thanks, Peter. So we've got another multiple choice question for everyone. And this question is asking who must satisfy the fit and proper requirement in the TASA, or the Tax Agent Services Act 2009. And we've got 4 different options for you to choose from. Option 1 is individual tax practitioners. Option 2 is directors of a company tax practitioner. C is directors of a company partnership tax practitioner, and the final option is individual partners of a partnership tax practitioner. So when you're selecting your response here, just assume all the options provided include those applying to register or are registered as tax practitioners. And I'll give you a little bit of a hint on this one. There is more than one correct answer available here. So I'll let you have a little moment to put through your responses. And then once again, we'll share those results with you and let you know what the correct response is. Okay, I might close that one off again now, and that's ending. So I'll share the results there. And Peter, it looks like we've got 94% of people saying individual tax practitioners, 69% say directors of a company tax practitioner, 66% say director of a company, partner of a partnership tax practitioner, and 72% have said individual partners of a partnership tax practitioner. So I will hand over to you now, and you can tell us what the correct responses are. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. This really is the classic all of the above is the correct answer for this one. Everybody who is a tax practitioner or who is a partner in a tax practitioner partnership or a director of a tax practitioner company is required to be a fit and proper person to become registered, and you must continue to be a fit and proper person for all the time that you are a registered agent or a partner or a director in a registered agent company or BAS agent company. And I can't stress enough that that must be the case for all of the time that you are a registered practitioner, a partner, or a director of a registered practitioner. So really to talk about what does it mean to be a fit and proper person, when we're looking at whether a person is fit and proper, we must consider if that person is of good fame, integrity and character. We must consider whether they've been convicted of any serious tax offences or any offences involving fraud or dishonesty. We must consider whether they've been sentenced to a term of imprisonment. And we must also specifically consider whether they've met all of their personal tax obligations. So being in compliance with their own personal tax obligations is a positive requirement of the TASA. Registered practitioners are also subject to various civil penalty provisions which can impose financial penalties for making or for committing certain conduct. This can include making a false or misleading statement to the Commissioner, signing declarations or statements that have been prepared by someone who is unregistered or not under the supervision of a registered practitioner. From time to time, you register with us, from the time you register with us, you are required to comply with all of your obligations under the Code of Professional Conduct. The Code sets out the professional and ethical standards required of practitioners, including the obligations they have to their clients, to the TPB, and in relation to their own conduct.
Thanks, Peter. Can you break down the code a little bit more now, just to provide some more detail for everyone online with us?
As I've said, the Code establishes the set of ethical or professional standards that registered tax practitioners must meet and continue to meet. In short, the code sets out the standard for your personal conduct as a registered tax practitioner. There are 5 key principles embodied in the code. Firstly, honesty and integrity. Secondly, independence. Thirdly, confidentiality. Fourthly, competence in relation to the services you provide. And fifth, a group of other responsibilities that we can talk about in a bit more detail as we go through. As I said, the first principle is honesty and integrity. Under this principle, you must comply with the taxation laws in the conduct of your own personal affairs. Additionally, if you receive money or other property on behalf of a client or from a client and you hold that money or property on trust, you must account for it appropriately to your client. The independence principles, you must act lawfully in the best interest of your client and have in place adequate arrangements for the management of any conflicts of interest that may arise in your practice. The confidentiality principle outlines that you must not disclose any information relating to a client's affairs to a third party without the client's permission or unless there is a legal duty to do so. So be careful when you're doing things like using cloud servers to make sure that if the information is your client's information and you're storing it on third-party cloud, you should have your client's permission to do that or make that disclosure. Under the competence principle, you are obligated to provide a competent service to your clients. You should take reasonable care in ascertaining your client's state of affairs, and you should ensure that the taxation laws are applied correctly to those individual circumstances. Under the code, you also have a series of other responsibilities that are in our 5th pillar. So these responsibilities outline that you must not knowingly obstruct the proper administration of the taxation laws. You must advise your clients of their rights and obligations under the taxation laws that are related to the services that you provide them. You are obligated to maintain PI insurance. You must respond to requests from the TPB in a timely, responsible and reasonable manner. You must not employ a person that you know or reasonably know is a disqualified entity in circumstances where you don't have the board's approval to employ that person or use the services of a disqualified entity to provide taxation services on your behalf. You must not provide taxation services in connection with an arrangement with an entity that you know or reasonably know is a disqualified entity. You must also comply with any obligations determined under section 30-12 of the code. There are 8 additional obligations recently introduced under Code Item 17. These obligations commence from 1 July 2025 for practitioners that have 100 or less employees as at 31 July 2024, and they apply on 1 January 25 for any other tax practitioner, i.e. those with more than 100 employees. In the interest of time, I won't go through all of these obligations today, but I would encourage you to view our recent webinar series on this topic. We'll also send a link to you today to that webinar series, and I will also let you know that watching that webinar series will be qualifying CPE. On the next slide, I just want to talk a little bit about responding to requests from the board in a timely and responsible manner. As I've touched on, if you receive a request or a direction from the board, you are obligated under the code to respond to that request in a timely, responsible and reasonable manner. The board may contact you to request information, including perhaps in relation to your PI insurance or your CPE compliance. Please respond to that as soon as humanly possible and in any event within the statutory timeframes. Examples of failure to respond to the board or direction in a timely, responsible, reasonable manner may include failing to provide written response to the board correspondence within the time specified in that correspondence, making arrangements with the board to provide information and subsequently failing to provide that information, providing responses to the board and or directions that are false or misleading. Let's move on to talk about complying with our own tax obligations. It's really clear under the code that you are obligated to comply with the tax laws in the conduct of your own personal tax affairs. This is, of course, a general requirement of all tax practitioners, but for practitioners, it's expressly important because of the significant role you play in influencing and supporting the integrity of the tax system. So please make sure that you keep your obligations up to date and in line with community expectations. When we talk about personal affairs and personal tax obligations, timely lodgement is incredibly important, and that includes all your income tax returns, your activity statements, payment of super guarantee obligations, and PAYG withholding and instalments. Some of the things that you may consider in deciding whether a tax practitioner has complied with their taxation obligations in their personal affairs include whether you've lodged all your returns, whether they've been lodged on time, and whether all of the activity statements have been lodged by the due date. To make sure that you've taken reasonable care in interpreting the tax laws in your own personal affairs, and to make sure that all your ATO debts have been paid on time, including all of the instalments, and that you've provided a full and complete disclosure of any outstanding personal tax obligations to the TPB at the time of your registration or renewal of your registration. You must also notify the TPB of any change in circumstances, including that you are no longer able to meet the registration requirements, or if there is a change in the composition of a tax agent practice. We have an information sheet which refers to complying with tax obligations and taxation laws in the conduct of your own personal affairs, which is available on the website. I'd now like to move on and talk a little bit about taking reasonable care. Two items of the code relate to taking reasonable care to ascertain the state of your client's tax affairs and to apply taxation laws correctly. Here are some of the steps that we think you should be taking to make sure you comply with your reasonable care obligations. Firstly, exercising professional judgment and taking into account all of the relevant factors. You can use signed written engagement letters with your clients to assist you in this, and we strongly recommend the use of engagement letters. This is a place where you can set out your arrangements with your clients in relation to communication, in particular in relation to what it is that's going to be done in providing tax services, who will do it, how and when it will be done, and how much the work might cost, for example, a schedule of fees. Common understanding and communication between you and your client and how you work together and how the work is to be paid for can assist in avoiding any disputes over fees and any disputes about the scope of work and any possible misunderstanding about when things will be done. Moving on now to talk about taking reasonable care. You should also make sure that in the conduct of your practice, you maintain adequate supervision and control in relation to all the staff that are working on clients' tax affairs. All registered practitioners are obliged to ensure that services that they provide or are provided on their behalf are provided competently, and this generally requires you to make sure that there's adequate supervision and control, that your staff are adequately trained and have the right set of skills to make sure that the services are competent. And in addition, we also encourage you to ensure that you've got all of the relevant positive steps, that you've made all the right inquiries of your clients, that you've asked the relevant questions about their changing perhaps personal work, business circumstances, that you've requested any further information that you might need to make appropriate decisions or give appropriate advice, and you've sought any guidance that you may need or additional assistance you might need for any matters that are outside of your normal area of expertise. Let's move on and talk about CPE hours. All registered practitioners are obligated under the code to undertake appropriate amount of CPE. Generally, tax agents should complete a minimum of 120 hours of CPE over a 3-year period. BAS agents should complete 90 hours over a 3-year period. For each of a tax or BAS agent, you must do at least a minimum of 20 hours every year, but add up to the whole 120 or 90 over that 3-year period. If your registration is for a 3-year period, we encourage you to do as much of it on a pro rata basis as is humanly possible. And as you know, we're moving forward into an annual registration phase coming up, so it'll be more important to try and make sure that you pro rata your CPE to the best of your ability. Any education activities that the tax practitioner develops or promotes skills are generally CPE, so long as they're relevant to the tax services you're providing. So you should use your own professional judgment when selecting CPE activities. But some of the great examples are the webinars, seminars, workshops and courses that the TPB or the professional associations run, structured conferences and discussion groups, including phone discussion groups and video conferencing discussion groups, tertiary education courses, research writing and presentation by a registered tax or VAS agent of technical publications or structured training. There are computer and internet assisted courses. There's attendance at structured in-house training within your own practice. There are relevant CPE activities conducted by your recognised professional associations. I want to stress that our CPE policy specifically recognises the relevance of cyber security training and related IT skills. So we certainly regard anything to do with cyber security training as complying CPE. We also have a 10% allowance for any training in relation to health and wellbeing activities for yourself and your staff. So those activities can be included in your CPE. Julie, I'll hand over to you to conduct a quick poll.
Thanks, Peter. We just wanted to do one final poll. Again, it's a multiple choice question, and this time we wanted to test your knowledge on CPE. So we've got the scenario here. We have Stephen, a registered BAS agent. Stephen attends a training session provided by Master Software. He uses the Deluxe Master Software package developed by Master Software to assist him in providing BAS services to clients. Now, Stephen recognises that the training session he's attended is indirectly relevant to the BAS services that he provides. He also decides to attend an online seminar by Beyond Blue about managing his mental health. So the question that we're asking here is, which courses do you think Stephen can claim as CPE under the TPB's policy? So I'm just launching that for you now. And there's a few options there for you to choose from. So the first one is both the training session by Master Software and the online session by Beyond Blue. Only the Beyond Blue online session, and then the final option is only the Master Software training session. So again, I'll just give you a couple of seconds to put through your responses, and then we'll come back and share that with you. Okay, people are answering this one quite quickly, so we're just over 50% now. I'll give you a couple more seconds before I close it off. Okay, I'm just going to close that now. Thank you to everyone who participated in that poll. I'll pop the results up on the screen. So you can see there that we've had 74% of people think that both of the courses can be claimed as CPE. 7% said only the Beyond Blue, and 19% have said only the Master Software training session. So Peter, back to you to give us the response there, the correct answer.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. Clearly, the Master Software training, it's not technical tax, but it really is an important part of how an agent is delivering their services, that they're really competent in using the software that makes the lodgements and helps them with the tax services. So we definitely include the Master Software training. And as we discussed, the Beyond Blue seminar to assist with mental health, we're really happy that that can be included as part of the CPE package, with the only limit that you can only claim 10% of your total CPE as part of, in relation to things like the Beyond Blue seminar. But in this instance, both seminars clearly compliant with our CPE policy.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that, Peter. Next, let's move on so we can have a look at the penalties and sanctions that are available to the TPB for compliance issues. Thanks.
Thanks, Julie. At the TPB, we have a range of sanctions that are available to us when agents or registered practitioners don't meet their obligations under the code. There are several civil penalty provisions in the TASA relating to conduct of registered practitioners and certain activities that are being undertaken. As you can see, we have the possibility of a written caution. We can make an order against the tax practitioner. We can suspend a practitioner's registration, or in the most egregious of cases, we can terminate. The sanction that we use will depend on the circumstances of the cases. But in terms of how we use them, a written caution might be where there's a minor matter or an isolated matter that a practitioner hasn't met their obligations. So after an investigation or preliminary inquiries, we might simply write to the practitioner and say, look, we've noticed this behaviour that you've been engaged in. Stop doing it, and here's an official caution under the Act. For the more serious of cases, we might order that a practitioner undergoes a course of education or training that we specify to help them fully understand their obligations under the code. We might limit them to only provide service in certain areas. So, for instance, there have been a number of occasions where we've said to a practitioner, okay, you can only do individual returns, or no, you can't do R&D returns, or something like that. So that's an order that the practitioner is then obliged to comply with. We can, when things are getting more serious, suspend a practitioner's registration for a specified period, and that might be done in circumstances where we need to make sure that they do enough training and do enough remediation to be competent to be allowed back into the profession. Equally speaking, in the more egregious of cases, we will terminate a practitioner's registration, and we can impose a non-reapplication period of up to 5 years in the most serious cases. So that would mean that the practitioner is no longer registered to practice and ineligible to apply to be re-registered for up to 5 years. Whenever a penalty or a sanction is imposed by the TPB, the practitioner has a right of review and can make an application to the Administrative Review Tribunal, and the Review Tribunal will review the decision of the TPB and will either confirm or vary the order that the TPB has made. Our experience generally is that our sanctions are most often upheld. The board also has the capacity in certain circumstances to apply to the federal court to impose a civil penalty for breaches of the civil penalty provisions, and this could mean a fine or a penalty for an individual of up to $55,000 for each breach, or for a body corporate, a penalty of up to $277,500 for each breach. Let's have a look at a real-life case study to try and put some context around these provisions. In our first case study, after an investigation, the TPB found that through our board conduct committee that the agent had breached 4 items of the code, including not acting with honesty and integrity, including not complying with taxation laws in the conduct of their own affairs, including not acting lawfully in the best interests of their client, and including maintaining professional indemnity insurance that meets the board's requirements. In this instance, as you can see, the agent failed to act honestly and with integrity by systematically misappropriating $2.5 million worth of client funds. They then failed to comply with a payment arrangement that they'd entered into with the ATO for their own income tax debts. They clearly weren't acting lawfully in the best interest of their clients because they were misappropriating their clients' funds for their own personal advantage. And in the course of our investigation, we found that they hadn't maintained the required policy of professional indemnity insurance. So following that investigation and a board conduct committee hearing, the board decided that they would terminate the registration of that agent, and we applied the maximum 5-year period in which they're not entitled to reapply. We also found that that agent was not a fit and proper person to be a registered agent, and that finding means that that person does not meet the registration requirements. So in effect, the termination is almost automatic. And you can see that this is a really serious case of breach of trust and dishonest behaviour in relation to their clients, and not the sort of person that should be in the ranks of registered practitioners. Let's jump forward to case study 2 now, please. In case study 2, we have a situation where a BAS agent demonstrated a lack of integrity and disregard for their professional obligations under the code when they lodged multiple business activity statements on behalf of their client, but without the client's knowledge or authorisation that they were doing so. The agent then failed to account to their client by not passing on the refunds that arose from these lodgements, instead misappropriating the funds to their own personal use. They also made false and misleading statements to the Commission of Taxation when they lodged these false BAS statements because they were making a return that included false information. In misappropriating the client refunds and failing to account for the client refunds, the agent was found to have failed to act lawfully in the best interest of their client. This egregious behaviour led the ATO to issuing refunds that the client was not entitled to, that were stolen or misappropriated by the agent. This then resulted in the client becoming heavily indebted to the ATO in respect of those falsified refunds and the associated general interest charges. The agent again also provided false information and documentation to us during our investigation in an attempt to prevent the board from conducting its investigation and performing its lawful duties. Considering the agent had previously been sanctioned for similar conduct relating to unauthorised lodgements, the Board Conduct Committee decided to terminate the BAS agent's registration and to impose again the maximum 5-year ban on reapplying for registration. In making this decision, the BCC considered its role to ensure appropriate consumer protection and its objective to protect and maintain the integrity of the system. So, Julie, over to you now for some questions from the audience.
Thank you so much, Peter. We've had a lot of questions coming through, so it's good that we've got a bit of time to answer some of those. So the first one I've got is going back to the points that you made about the PI insurance. We've had a couple of people asking, do tax practitioners need to provide evidence of their PI insurance cover to the TPB?
Yeah, thanks, Julie. Certainly, when you initially apply for your registration, you do have to provide us with documentary evidence that you have the PI insurance, and subsequently, each year when you do your renewal, you're obligated to confirm that you have a policy in place, and you're obligated to provide us with any documentation that we ask for in those circumstances. So at the initial registration, provide the documentation, and then subsequently have it available if we ask for it.
Great.
From time to time, we might just ask you for a certificate of currency.
Excellent. Thanks, Peter. And just to clarify, if a practitioner doesn't have their PI insurance in place when they initially put through their registration, is there a period of time where they can put it into place?
They have to have it in place before they commence practicing.
Yep.
So you cannot commence practice without a PI insurance policy in place.
Great. Thank you so much for that. I want to go back as well now, Peter, to the additional code items that are coming into effect next year. You just touched on those very briefly, but I was just wondering if you could just expand on those a little bit more, just to let people know what the 8 requirements will be.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. The new requirements address a range of professional standards and are closely aligned to the professional standards already in place with the Accounting Professional Ethical Standards Board. Those standards apply to anybody who is a member of CPA Australia, the IPA or CANS already. So this is really broadening it out to the whole of the registered agent registered agent population. But they include an obligation to uphold and promote the ethical standards of the tax profession. They include obligations in relation to addressing or correcting or not making any false or misleading statements. There are obligations in relation to managing and declaring of conflicts of interest in any dealings with government or for government, and maintaining confidentiality about those dealings. They also include specific obligations into keeping proper client records and proper records of the services that you provide, ensuring the competency of your own services by making sure that you've got a quality management system in place, and obligations in relation to keeping your client informed of relevant matters in relation to the existence of the TPB, your obligations to your client, and your client's obligations to you.
Great, thank you for your response there, Peter. Just, I guess, further to keeping your clients informed and also the TPB, I've had a question asking, does a tax practitioner have to declare a medical diagnosis such as ADHD or something similar when they register with the TPB, and would they have to notify their clients of this as well?
Julie, the notification obligations have been specifically amended in the determination to make it crystal clear that you are not obligated to disclose your personal mental health or physical health diagnoses to your clients under any circumstances.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying. I've got a question from Veronica now, Peter, and this one's going back to when we spoke about the personal tax obligations. And Veronica's just asking, does complying with our tax obligations mean that they are unable to take advantage of tax office payment arrangement plans?
No, if an agent has a need to negotiate a payment plan with the ATO, they're welcome to do so. It's very important that if you have outstanding obligations that you do enter into a payment arrangement, and once you've entered into it, it's critical that you comply with that arrangement. So make sure that when you enter into that arrangement that you meet the obligations that you agree to under that arrangement.
Thank you. Next question I've got is from Heather, and she's just asking if you know of a person who's providing BAS services but they're not qualified or registered, what should you do in those sorts of situations?
You should definitely contact the TPB, and you can do it either by phone or on the website. There's a website form for doing it. Let us know of the information that you know about the person providing these services. Give us enough detail, and our investigations team will have a look at it. If there's a case to answer, we will pursue it, and we'll do our best to keep it as confidential as possible.
Thanks, Peter. Now, I've had a few people just commenting on the compliance case studies that you shared today, and just sort of commenting around the fact that the 5-year ban seems a bit too lenient for some of the cases that we're seeing. Is there any further, I guess, strengthening of the sanctions that the that the TPB can issue?
Yeah, thanks, Julie. The maximum 5-year period is prescribed in the TASA, so that's as much as we can currently do. Now, there's some consultation going on at the moment through Treasury that's looking at the sanctions that are available to the TPB to try and make some recommendations to government about whether the level of sanctions is appropriate for the task that we have. So if anybody wants to contribute to that, I encourage them to have a look at the Treasury consultation papers, and we'll see that emerge over the coming period in the new year.
Thanks, Peter. Now, I've had a lot of questions today around CPE, so I might just go through a few of those now. So the first one I've got for you is if I'm doing training in my practice where I'm an employee, does that count as CPE?
Yeah, definitely. Relevant training within the business is qualifying CPE.
Fantastic. Next one is how and where do we submit our continuing professional education records to the TPB?
So generally you don't need to submit your records, but you sign a declaration on your registration renewal which is now an annual renewal, that you are meeting your CPE obligations. From time to time, we might ask you to provide some proof of that. So we require everybody to keep contemporaneous records of their CPE and be able to demonstrate their compliance to us if we ask.
Great, thank you. Next one I've got on CPE is, can you explain how to align our CPE dates with our registration and recognise professional membership dates?
Yeah, sure. So you are entitled to elect to align your CPE period with the CPE of your professional association. This means that you can elect to have it based on either the calendar year or the financial year or the anniversary of your membership date of the relevant institution. So you don't need to advise us if you want to elect which period. But you should keep a record of your election and then keep records of your CPE period so that you can provide us with the contemporaneous record or log if and when we ask for it. Remember, once you've made the election, you stick with that election. You can't chop and change for convenience.
Thank you. Peter, just going back again to the code determination, I've had someone asking when the information sheets covering the obligations will be finalised.
We're very close to finalising those. We've been through the last point in the consultation process with the professional bodies, having completed the public consultation, and we're just doing the final edits and ticking of the boxes and crossing the T's and dotting the I's. So I'm pretty sure it'll be out soon before Christmas.
Great, thank you. I've got a question now about engagement letters. Do tax practitioners need an engagement letter for simple personal tax returns?
Julie, practitioners don't have a legal obligation under the TASA to use engagement letters, but we really strongly recommend that you do use an engagement letter. And I think a bit like quality management systems, the extent or sophistication of an engagement letter will vary depending on how a sophisticated engagement is. So I think a relatively simple letter can be used for a personal tax return. Make it clear, who the client is, what the fee basis for fees is. Make it clear that you're lodging, either one return or three returns. Make it clear that it's for one taxpayer or two, or a family group. Just make sure that all of the relevant matters are clear, and then we'll be able to know if we have to look at it that there's clear communication between agent and client, and that the services are clearly outlined, so that if we have to assess the competence, there's enough evidence there to help with that. So I strongly recommend that you use for all clients.
Great advice. Thank you, Peter. The next question here is it mandatory for tax practitioners to be members of a professional association such as IPA or CPA?
No, it's not mandatory. You do not. You need to meet the registration requirements under the TASA in an ongoing sense, but membership of a professional body is not mandatory.
Thank you. Could you also explain a little bit more about what is meant by a disqualified entity?
Yeah, a disqualified entity is set out in the TASA, and it covers any entity, and an entity includes a person or a company or a partnership that is not a registered tax practitioner or a qualified tax relevant provider and has one or more specified disqualifying events occurred to them in the last 5 years. These events basically covered in our guidance on the website, but are things like having been terminated by the TPB or found guilty of a fraud-related offence, tax promoter penalty offences, those sort of things. So you're disqualified from the profession for reason.
Thanks, Peter. And we'll share some links to that content on our website as well after the session today, so that you can find some more information if you need it. Peter, again, I've got another person just wanting to get a bit more information about compliance and just especially in relation to the case studies that we spoke about today, saying that they're sort of more extreme, high risk profiles of a case study. What does the TPB do when they're working with practitioners who might have a smaller breach that's not so extreme? Are there other sort of educational options available?
Yeah, and I think, Julie, that's typically where there might be an order made by the TPB. So when we see some of the lower level things that might be referred to us or as basis of an individual complaint, sometimes you're dealing with a practitioner who's made one or two mistakes, and we'll go through a process of preliminary inquiries or maybe even an investigation and say, look, you've done the wrong thing. What we want you to do is a training course in ethics or a training course in the code of conduct, some of those sort of things to make sure that you're up to speed on how you should be conducting your practice and conducting your relationships, and then, back to work. But as the behaviour gets more and more egregious, the penalties go up. And sometimes that's as simple as, we might have seen a practitioner who's done a few small things wrong and given them a caution in the past, but we might see them again later and they continue to do the things without having made any changes. So, continuing poor behaviour at a lower level is getting worse and worse because they're not changing their way. So we might have a tougher penalty coming around then. I think, one of the things I do want to emphasise again, the majority of you are doing or trying to do the right thing day in, day out. And what we're really trying to do is to focus on bad behaviour. The more egregious, outstanding ones, yeah, sure, we're going to terminate. But there's plenty of work done at that lower level with people, encouraging them to get back on the right footing through training, education, cautions, those sort of things, and orders. So that's part of day-to-day work.
Thanks. I think that's reassuring for people to hear that, Peter. I've got a couple of people asking, does today's webinar count towards CPE? It certainly does. You can claim an hour for coming along today. And Peter, I'll have a couple of questions here about registration renewal as well. So Heather's asking, if you renew your registration at the beginning of the 90 days, you can renew 90 days before your registration expires. Does that actually change your renewal date for the next renewal period, or does it stay the same?
It stays the same.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Easy one. And then I've got someone asking, if they fail to renew on time, will they lose their registration and have to reapply for renewal? Sorry, for registration.
If you fail to renew and you on time and you do it in a reasonably timely basis, you won't need to reapply. But we can't give you open slather forever to come back. So, if it's just a short-term oversight, we'll allow you to re-register. But if it was months or years, you'd have to reapply.
Great, thank you. And I think this is probably the last question for today. We're running out of time, but will the TPB be providing guidance on how to comply with the new obligations you spoke about? I think we've pretty much covered this, but I'll just let you have final words on that, Peter.
Yeah, we've got a package of guidance in relation to all of the 8 new code obligations under the Minister's determination. It's all been through consultation both at the professional bodies and in public, and it will all be released in the week or so before Christmas.
Great, thank you. And any final thoughts before we wrap up today?
Thanks, Julie. Just really thanks to everybody for their time today and for their ongoing efforts to be compliant with the Code of Conduct. I hope everybody has a good finish to the year and the opportunity to have a bit of a break. And we'll look forward to seeing everybody next year.
Thank you so much, Peter, and thank you for all your advice today. I'll just finish up by giving everyone a little bit of information on how to stay in touch with us now. So obviously you can visit our website, which we've discussed today, which is tpb.gov.au. You can also follow us on socials. So we're on LinkedIn, Facebook and X. So that's where you'll get the most up-to-date information. We also have our e-news, which goes out monthly, and we highly recommend that you subscribe to that. So that's tpb.gov.au/newsroom. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel and you'll receive notifications when we post new content there. And as we've talked about today, you can watch the recordings of our webinars that we have there and still claim your CPE. Just make sure you record the details in your CPE log. I just wanted to say thank you to Daniel as well for assisting us with the questions today. He has been kept very busy, but has done a great job in responding to all the questions that we had. And finally, just to finish up today, we will be launching an exit survey, and we would really appreciate it if you could take the time to complete it. It's super quick, just takes 1 moment of your time. And the feedback that you provide, we do look at that. We look at it to improve on the webinars. And also, if you've got suggestions for topics, we highly encourage you to put those through via the survey as well. So we will look at those and endeavour to put those into our program of work. So that survey just pops up in your browser when you leave the webinar today. So once again, thank you so much, Peter, for everything today. And thank you to everyone for joining us. We hope that we can connect with you all again soon. And I do wish you a happy and safe holiday period. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon.